Welcome, BBCers, to episode number 257 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one League of Legends educational and motivational podcast. Charlie, Curtis, we are going to be exploring the topic today of OTP, stands for One Trick Pony. OTPing, climbing is an OTP. Why do people OTP? Talking about the pros and cons. Where should we start here, guys? How did this come up, Curtis? We had a school post this week, right?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discourse in our school community, and I've seen it everywhere, whether it's on Twitter, Reddit, everywhere. And basically, there's a lot of controversy around should you OTP and is OTPing the best way to climb? Optimizing for climb versus enjoyment, and should you have a champ pool, and this whole kind of topic, really. And I think it's kind of come to the forefront recently. There's been a bunch of high elo content creators making content in off-roll, right? Like Doublelift doing a mid lane stream. You had Dante's going to 80 carry. You've obviously had Tyler One doing his things. So it's kind of been the meta, I guess, in the content creation field as well. And it really, there's been a lot of interesting discussion around it. So today I really want to explore it in a very kind of more in-depth way. And I want to preface this episode by saying we are going to be referring to things such as champion pools and champ pool cycling. So I think this is a great opportunity to remind people we actually have a free champion pool course that goes in depth on these concepts, how to build your champion pool cycling in our school community. Link in the description below. We will not be redefining all these terms. We've done it a trillion times. If you're confused, check out the school course.
Okay, so we're going to start here with... I was going to say first, actually, the common question that people always say, or the common advice in the community is... One tricking is the best way to climb, and we're going to explore here. It's more nuanced than that, okay? It depends sort of where you are in your journey, so we're really going to break down that as well. Like this school post here was basically saying solo queue heavily over-incentivized one tricking, to climb. So the first thing that we will start with here, guys, is simply why do people one trick, OTP?
Yeah, so I guess like the first thing I wrote down here is like people love champions, right? I think like... We know League of Legends is a game of champions, right? It's not really a game of roles. It's a game of champions. And people gravitate towards them for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe people like their kits because they feel good. People maybe like aspects of their design because they look cool or they relate to it.
Skins.
I came to this game and I liked Caitlyn and Vayne because I came from Call of Duty. So I like shooting guns, right? I wanted to be a marksman. So I think for a lot of different reasons, people like champions. But I think it's a large part of the reason why people OTP, and I think we'll get into it later, but how you have longevity as an OTP is you must love the champion, because why else would you stick with it for so long? All the OTPs that you can think of, like OnZ, Hassam on Swain, all these other people on Twitch, they love their champions more than anything, right?
I actually think that's a really great place to start, because the fact of the matter is this. If you do not love your champion, it doesn't matter how amazing being an OTP is for your rank journey in climbing. It will not be sustainable. It will not last. You will burn out, right? And so the reality, when push comes to shove, even if that reality were true, even if we sat here and say OTPing is best for climbing and improving, even if that were to be true, it doesn't matter if you don't love that champion. Simple as that, because of burnout.
We also need to differentiate here. Obviously, this is more of a solo queue improvement ranked climbing podcast. OTPing to climb versus just flat out enjoyment. These are different categories of players. Maybe someone doesn't really care about climbing. They just want to spend, 100 games playing Caitlyn or, 1,000 games playing Yasuo, and they just love the champ so much they actually don't really care about climbing.
I think that's a really good point, because when I actually feel like Nathan, Charlie, like for the first few years of our coaching, we were constantly attacking every problem through the lens of like, what is objectively like the truth or best in terms of just like, if we're all AI,
we were recommending champions. We only did coaching on specific champions. We were very rigid.
We were super, super rigid. We just realized there is just this messy human nature of League of Legends. It's a hobby. It's emotional. We're not all here trying to optimize the climb. And so the reality is that like, I think as we're going through this conversation, I really want people to think not in terms of what's objectively best for climbing. I really want them to think about sustainability and longevity. That's like the themes of this discussion. What's sustainable for their league journey? I think that's very, very, very important.
And that's different for different people, right? Like Nathan was just citing there a player who might love the game by just spamming a champion. Other people love the game. We've seen it spamming a bunch of different champions.
Exactly right.
So yeah, not saying one is better than the other. Some are more conducive to enjoyment rather than climbing. Obviously, if you're playing a different champ every game in League, you're climbing on hard mode. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that, right? So somewhere on the other end of the spectrum is going to be somewhere more optimal.
Yep.
Does it exist a player who OTPs? They don't actually care too much about the champion, but they just want to just cut all the fluff and just literally just play for the LP, and they just
I've got some people in Botlane Academy who are playing MF and they don't particularly like it too much, and I've kind of brought it up with them, and they're like, I just really want to like figure this out. So I guess they enjoy the process of figuring it, or I guess there's a difference between enjoyment and satisfaction. Like they're clearly getting some satisfaction out of spamming the champion and sticking to a rigorous like routine, right? So there is that aspect, but I don't love the champ.
Well, this is where I think again we need to clarify. OTP is a term that when I think of OTP, I'm thinking of someone that is playing that champion for an extended period of time. When you're talking about, that you're talking to people who are playing MF, right? They're not really OTPing MF. They are theoretically in the short term, but I would say that's more of like a champ holiday or a champion like arc.
It's like an era.
They're dialing in. They're locking in.
Exactly. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn MF because that's going to, you've been very vocal, Charlie, about MF being great for learning, teaching AD carry fundamentals. So someone kind of dialing in on MF for like 100 games, these people, they're not, I guess theoretically, they're temporarily OTPing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
it might last a year. It is a couple of hundred. Like if you play 1 year of solo queue, and in that year you play 400 games of a champion, and then the max of like 10 or 20 on something else, are you an OTP at that point?
Yeah, and this is a great question because I think it's important that we this has been a common recurring theme on our podcast. Confusion about terminology.
Yeah, just getting angry.
What does the community, the average person on Reddit, when they think OTP, does that mean in their mind that's years? Is that seasons? Is that a month? Like what is?
Because the years one's rare. There's very few people that can commit to a champ for more than a season.
Yeah,
very
that's a long
rare.
time. That's a very, very long time. And for the sake of this conversation, I think we should be very careful when let's talk about it. OTP for X amount of time. I think we need to get a bit more granular in that sense.
All right, so next up here, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of OTPing, playing one champion for very, very long periods of time. So
an extended period of time. Let's say for this again, what time span are we talking about? What's an extended period of time?
2 seasons. Let's go 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So 1 year, I think it's understandable for someone to have a pool and then swap it after that year. So let's say they stuck with it for 2 years.
Okay.
An OTP means one champion. Not one main and then others that they play sometimes. No, like literally the one champion.
Your OPGJ would look like 350 games with this champion, and the next champion's like 20 games or 10
exactly
games,
right.
or whatever it is.
Okay.
For 2 years. Maybe 18 months. Maybe 22 years, 18 months. Let's just say that. It's close enough. All right, so let's start off with the pros. So I'll just list these out and you guys can elaborate them if you want. So simplifies the learning journey. There's less variables.
Yeah, I guess this is one of probably the most commonly understood parts of OTPing. Very simply, instead of mastering, let's say you had a champion pool of 5 champions, that's 20 abilities. Instead of learning about 20 abilities, you have to learn about 4 abilities.
And matchups.
And now all those, and then it compounds because if you play 5 champions, and let's say that there's 10 matchups you see frequently, that's 50 matchups, right? So it gets crazy how much it compounds, So yeah, just less things to learn across the board.
And then also you don't need to learn differing skills. You know what I mean? Like if you have a pool, sometimes differing champions in your pool require you to over-index in particular skill sets. Whereas if you just play one champion, you can kind of just all in double down on a particular set of skills.
Reviewing becomes simpler.
Yeah, I guess it's the same reason, right? Like Curtis talking about different skill sets. For example, if I'm trying to learn... If I'm a Zeri OTP, I don't really need to put too much focus on reviewing my early trading. It's probably not that important. I can just streamline my review around what my champion wants to accomplish in the game, and I'll know what my champion wants to accomplish because I've played so much of it.
Well, I think, the reviewing gets easier for it can be easier. I'm going to say can be easier for a multitude of reasons. You know what's important.
Yeah.
You know what is the big 20% is with your champion, and you also intuitively understand, if you're a real OTP, the significance of an error. So if you're at, Nathan, when you're at your prime with Rek'Sai, you would know how significant a particular...
Like showing on the map, for example.
You would
Showing
know
on the map,
what that means for that game state. You know, one of the biggest problems people have with reviewing is that they don't know what's important. There's all these events that happen, but where do I direct my attention? As an OTP, you know, just off experience, sample size, what's really costing me games here?
A good example would be, let's say I'm playing a Rek'Sai or an early game jungler. It doesn't really scale that well. And I trade 1-for-1 with a Master Yi. If I'm reviewing it from the Rek'Sai's perspective, not good. Master Yi's perspective, trading 1-for-1's fine because I'm going to be able to delay the game. I'm getting gold for my items. So completely changes sort of the way that you're reviewing and thinking about the game.
Exactly right. So it simplifies it in the sense you know the significance of it. You understand the significance of an event. And then I would say also in reviewing, because you're only, again, playing that one champion, you can actually reduce the variables. You're not going from champ to champ, you know, like from game to game. So if you have just one champion, you can really dial in on learning objectives. Right? You can really dial in because it's like, well, it's not like I'm playing Yi this game, then Rek'Sai this game, then Karthus the next game. It's like you're playing one champion. So I can have a learning objective that is actually specifically tailored to Rek'Sai for one champion, and I could dial that in.
And think about it, that's how all of us learn champions.
Yes.
Both to make guides and to just improve ourselves. Like if I'm learning Renekton top lane and I want to work on my Fury management, that's a whole lot easier if I can only play Renekton. But if I'm trying to weave in like in Darius, Garen, Urgot games in between the Renekton games, I'm going to learn a lot slower.
Exactly right.
Next up here, more of an in-game one, is your mental stack is going to be freed up so you can actually play League. You can think about what your teammates want to do. You can think about lane assignments. You can think about how to win the game, what's next, how to actually kill the Nexus rather than actually piloting the champion. And, you know, this is where it comes to developing mastery. Once you have thousands of hours of the champion, playing the champion mechanically is sort of like on autopilot in a way. You play out the fights, you know exactly what your role is. So if you play one champion for a long, long period of time, you don't need to actually think about, you know, actually piloting a champion. You can think about the game holistically.
You can actually start playing League of Legends as a game, thinking cerebrally. You have the mental capacity to think cerebrally about the game.
Yeah, one little caveat with that is like, it's not necessarily that ability usage becomes automatic. It's like, I would say the mechanical side of ability usage does, but it's like, you can then get more intricate. So for example, like, again, I have to talk AD carry, but like Corki W, for example, right? If I'm really competent at Corki, I know exactly how to use W, right? So when it comes to a team fight, I can use that ability in a more nuanced way. I know when to W in compared to W out. I can use W for damage. I can hold it in certain situations. So, and that still requires mental stack, but that only becomes freed up when I know how to cycle my abilities, when I know how much damage I can do particularly, and like how much damage you can take as well. So yeah, even at the highest level, we always want to be putting a focus on our ability usage, right? It's never going to be completely automatic.
Next one here, we've got signal versus noise. I guess this comes into sort of simplifying the journey. You are dialing in on, you don't need to worry about the whole champ pool cycling and all that sort of stuff. You just focus on how do I get good at this champion, and everything else don't care about. I don't care about patch notes unless it's really got to do with my champion. I don't care about, you know, the yapping about people about the meta. That I just purely just focus on the, you know, my champion, block out all the other noise and distractions from the League of Legends community.
Yeah, you don't even have to engage or entertain the idea of any of, like, you know, there's always that gnawing thing in people's minds. Should I swap my champion pool? Is my champ bad in the meta? And this,
click on that tier list video on YouTube.
Yeah, it just remove all of that completely. It blocks it. You can block out a lot of noise.
You develop a clear player identity, and this comes into confidence. A lot of people lose confidence, I find, in Jungle Academy and in WTL programs, is that when the moment you're questioning about your champion, you're playing in your champ pool, your league journey just falls apart. You think, am I wasting my time? All these questions come in. Is this champion strong? Is it going to be relevant in 3-4 months? All these things will be popping up in your head. Unless if you're an OTP, again, just sort of blocking out the noise. It's just like, well, I'm committed to the champion. I need to figure out this champion no matter what the meta is or anything like that. So you're really developing a clear, I'm a League of Legends player. I play this champion. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really big on having a play. Exactly, for confidence. Like, I know what I'm about. I know what my strengths are. You know, I can clearly identify my strengths as a player, and being able to vocalize that and own that, it's like kind of giving yourself a cornerstone to build develop your kind of career in the game, if you will. You know what I mean? It gives you a platform to build from. And I think there's something to be said about that.
I think it's really funny to contrast the three of us as well when we started playing
There we
League.
go.
So we'll get to Charles last. Curtis's identity. Curtis likes skill shots and mages. Curtis was that guy, right? So everything, your champion was like Ziggs, Xerath, and you got very, very good at hitting skill shots to the point where people thought you were hacking and cheating. That's how good Curtis was at the top of Challenger Knows. Me, I was about the hyper-efficient farming tank jungler, more sort of, I'll say supportive, more style, but sort of playing like, be really tanky and being hyper efficient. That was my, I played all my champions that way. I played, Udyr. I played, it was like Nasus jungle at the time. Like even champs like Rammus, I'd play high farm on these champions and sort of play more of the farming sort of tankier style. I didn't really play any of his mechanics max. So sort of like low mechanical champions, high farm and tanky. And then Charles, this is where Charles' journey, I think you can maybe speak on this more from my observation. Charles
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Charles, I feel like, didn't really have an identity, and that actually really affected you for many, many years. I mean, I think initially you started off with the whole ADC, your identity with ADC and playing, FPS games and stuff like that, but you would lose the plot with your identity. As, you switched lots of roles, you played a lot of champions, and that has, I guess, its pros and cons, I guess, as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, could go deep on this, could do a whole episode on this, to be honest.
Charles' journey, yeah.
But look, I mean, I think high level, like, I have just played a lot of things over the years, and I regret none of it.
Yeah.
I think it's got me where I am. I think that I am, like, I mean, it's kind of pointless talking about it, because it's just not really relevant to other people, but I just have a lot of strengths at this point. Like, I've reached, like, 700 LP in, like, multiple roles at this point, and, yeah, I could have maybe got higher in one role and one champion if I stuck to it, but, like, I like the skill sets I have. And what Curtis was saying earlier in terms of like player identity, like I just embrace that about it. Like I can play a certain role for seasons and get a relatively good rank. And yeah, just jump around doing that on multiple different things. I like different aspects of the game and different eras of my life, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I guess you like tied your identity to sort of different eras. Like, this is this era, this is this era.
I think that's so cool. I think it's just I was talking to Curtis about this off camera. That's like kind of contrasting OTPing is the champ pool cycling. And I've intuitively champ pool cycled since I started playing the game. And I OTP'd in very small chunks, like 100 games of Diana, 100 games of Bel'Veth, 100 games of Thresh, 100 games, like so many champions. Like it's like 50 champs.
And I think this is, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because again, we're not here to tell anyone what to do. We're just laying out the facts.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, if we do lay out the facts, Nathan and I did get high rank.
100%.
Shorter, that's
You know what I
right,
mean? In a shorter period of time.
time.
And arguably, if you went down that route and you specialize in, Caitlyn and Vayne or whatever, and you specialize in 80, you probably would have been the same rank as us.
If I had stuck with 80 carries since 2012 when I started, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, you would have been like a pretty crazy pro player or something like that. So I will say, like, that is in a way a kind of a testament to the power of specializing.
Definitely.
To a certain degree. Obviously, that's a small sample
Well,
size.
I also would have argued that, like, with my thought process and my mentality at the time, there's no way I would have stuck with it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have the drive to do it, and I enjoyed the game in different ways.
Yeah.
So again, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, no, and I think it's we need to talk about that more later.
Yeah.
Like the enjoyment factor.
But you are right. Like, physically, that it could have happened that way,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then the last pro we have here is you learn how to win hard games. I think this is a really important skill. It's very easy to always just go to, it's just a bad game for my champion or the draft or whatever. You need to okay, I'm OTPing, so I have to figure out how to win this game with this like really hard draft. And that builds like a certain resilience, a certain mindset towards the game that sort of like every game's winnable if I sort of just play perfectly.
Yeah, you always talk about the power of winning hard games.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean by that? Why do you think it's so important to win hard games?
I think it just trains a muscle. It's just training the muscle because it's so easy to throw off. Just like, I'm not going to review that game. I'm not going to worry about that game because it was just a hard game. And also learning to identify what is a hard game.
Yeah, that too.
That's the other thing as well. So if you play a champion a lot, you'll know, like you might not, again, I'm not saying that everyone has challenger knowledge, but you have an intuition like, why did this game feel way harder than this game? I just couldn't play fights this game. Why? And then you go down a rabbit hole and you can learn more about your champion and get better at the game that way. So yeah, learning how to identify what a hard game is, learning how to win those hard games is, I think, a very good skill as an OTP that this trains this muscle.
And I think it forces you to really problem solve
solve.
skirmishing as
Yes,
well.
yeah.
It's like, okay, this fight didn't work well. How could I have min-maxed my kit to do something differently? I'll give you just a really clean example. Like, I did a Vex review with someone this morning, and I have a lot of experience on Vex. Something that's really unintuitive Vex. People think of Vex as like a dive champion. It's all about diving onto the backline, killing the squishies. But I'm like, well, actually, in this game, you're versing a lot of divers. You have a Fed AD carry. You actually should have sat on your AD carry. MW.
Yeah.
And you win this fight. And that's something that is champ mastery. That's if you play a lot of Vex and you understand, you play Vex in the hard games, that's what you're forced to do. Because I can't just dive in the backline every single game. Sometimes I actually have to peel. I can't dive. And so just through putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, you can come to these crazy conclusions that aren't exactly obvious to other people who don't main that champion. So there's an inherent advantage of champion mastery there.
100%. I think we haven't written it down here, but I think it's kind of a bit self-explanatory, but you develop intuition, right? You move away from the logical part of League of Legends where it's like, I do this because of X and I have like this lovely flow chart. Like anyone can kind of load in with like the Amumu flow chart and just play the game. But like an Amumu one trick would have a disgusting amount of intuition around like when to go in, when to cross mount, when to trade off, when to ult the front line, weird stuff like this.
Multi-man ults versus just ult one person.
Yeah, like ulting a support once and then like doing, like the intuition gets crazy once you play a lot of games.
There is this kind of, we didn't mention it, but I want to riff on this a little bit. There is this like special aspect of League of Legends that almost gets unlocked. It's like an extra level that kind of gets unlocked when you go deep in champion mastery. You kind of realize that there is so much more that you can do with your champion than meets the eye. You know what I mean? Like when all of us, if you think about your best champion, like you can do things that break the game sometimes. You're like, wow, like I don't even understand how I did that. That is so, it's kind of like addictive. It's like this feeling of this, like, it's not even kind of, I mean, you can't break it down logically, but it's like, it unlocks this whole area of possibility. You know what I mean? And I feel like if you've never got to that point in champion mastery before, you've just, piss farted around on all these different champions, and you've never felt that, you actually are missing out, in my opinion. You actually don't know what it feels like. There was a school post I saw responding to your comment last episode about, you said, anyone can, what does it mean to say you can play a champion?
Oh, yeah.
And this school post said, I feel like I can play like 5 champions. This person was like in silver. And it really reminded me, like, this person just doesn't know. The reason they're saying that, even despite hearing it, is that they don't know what champion mastery feels like.
Yeah.
And there was another layer there that I think is unlocked.
100%. I mean, I'll just call myself out here. Like my most played champion this season is Kai'Sa, right? I'm sitting at like 200 LP at the moment, and my I've got like 100 games on her. I have like a 56% win rate. I can't play Kai'Sa to the standard I want. I'll just like nowhere near as well as I could play junglers. No, still nowhere near. But I've probably played like 200 games on her past 2 years, but I'm still not there because I watch other Kaisas and I see what they do. I'm like, I don't do that. So there's clearly that other level, right? And I think like watching other people play, you can find the level. Like I don't know who made the comment, but speaking directly to you, if you look at your gameplay on those champions and then you look at a challenger player on those champions and they're different, which they are, then you cannot play to their standard. You cannot play to what the champion's capable of. So again, like it's cool to have confidence and like, yeah, you can lock them in and you can have fun and play and like you can do some cool stuff, but hold yourself to a really high standard because like Curtis said, that's when the game gets fun.
Okay, let's move on to cons now. Now, let's start off with the most obvious con and why OTPing is sometimes not attractive to people, or maybe Charles. I'm going to always keep using you as an example.
This is the Charlie episode. I feel bad. I'm just talking about myself this episode. Fucking hell.
So, burnout. People just get sick.
Burnout Revenge.
Burnout Revenge.
Sick of...
Great game.
I'm going to put Burnout Revenge on the screen.
Charles,
hijacking the
you'll
episode.
forget to do that.
That was a great game.
It was.
Yeah. Going into the every game with the same champion. There's a lot of champs out there. There's a lot of potential fun. The process of learning other champions. Sticking out with one champion is brutal sometimes. And the burnout, especially if maybe the champion's not that strong in the middle.
It's like that show, the one on Apple TV, the one everyone's watching. With data refining. Severance. It's like, it's like
rocking up
to work. I'm rocking up to work.
Same day, every day.
My alter ego on the Rift. I'm the hacker room guy. I'm going to go out there. And
your environment looks the same. You do the exact same
job. Get in the elevator, you come out.
I was like, ooh, yeah, I'm back. And yeah, I mean, this is why OTP, you have to be a different breed in a way, I feel like, because that it can't feel like you're doing data refining in Severance. It has to feel like it's an enjoyable experience. So the burnout is very real.
You've got to be a Mr. Milchick to enjoy OTP. You've got to come that level of enthusiasm.
Exactly right. And we always say, if League ever feels like a chore, you're doing something wrong. Yeah, you're doing something wrong. And this is the biggest turnoff. And again, enjoyment, big factor when it comes to, and we say this not because, remember, enjoyment leads to fun, leads to curiosity.
Yeah.
And engagement and
Yes,
intensity.
yes,
We're not just talking about happy, chappy fun. We're all gonna have fun. It's about fun breeds intensity. Intensity breeds curiosity. Curiosity breeds learning.
It's like passion, I would
Yes.
use is a good word. Like when I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking of these OTPs who stream, who they play tens of thousands of games. Like they're a bit kooky, you know? Like they're passionate about their champion. They're
Like Azzapp, he's so passionate about the game.
Yeah,
like
for
it's
sure.
so enthusiastic. He's so enthusitic about the game and
Vel'Koz.
about Vel'Koz. He loves Vel'Koz, and that's cool. And he could not do what he does without being if he wasn't passionate about Vel'Koz.
yeah.
100%.
All right, next one here. This one we might need to talk a little bit more about. Having a rigid view of the game, starting to lose perspective. Maybe you're not understanding how every champion works.
So this is where I think the whole conversation, this is a big one. I think there's multiple facets here. I think the first one is this. I want to start with when you become an OTP here, right? So
At what point in the journey?
at what point does it become rigid? Because, okay, so let's say someone has champ pool cycled throughout multiple years, then they're now sitting in Platinum 4, and they've watched a bunch of coaching content, whatever, and they're like, you know what, I want to dial in, and I want to specialize in Hecarim, and I want to be a Hecarim OTP now. Well, it's a very different experience to someone that is brand new to the game. They're in Iron 3, and they're gonna dedicate their life to a Mumu for the next 500 games. So I want you guys to riff on this idea about at what point does OTPing maybe lead to rigidity in your worldview?
Well, you kind of did it, Nathan. I certainly didn't. So
Yeah, I have experienced this. So yes, my journey is I started playing properly ranked in season 3. Udyr, went all in on Udyr, climbed from gold to master. Master didn't exist.
Master did not
to
exist.
Diamond 1.
Diamond 199 LP.
Yep, something like that. In about 2 months or something like that. And then from Diamond 1 to rank 2 challenger in like another 2-3 weeks after that. So really, really quick climb, purely playing Udyr. Now, if I played any other champion at that point, I would not be a 1000 LP player ranked 2 on the server at that time. I did have to learn other champions, and that was really difficult. So, and then I did that for years. So, season 3, season 4, season 5, I had Udyr. I did branch out to some of the other champions, but I still played one style, going back to my rigid view of how to win games with Udyr. Be a high farm, be super tanky, be unkillable, and, team fight well, I guess. And that became very, very difficult to learn when I came back after my whole Direwolves thing. I went to learn Jarvan and Elise and that sort of stuff. And it just took me ages to grasp how does it look to win games like this. And I tried to do the same thing that I did with Udyr and all that sort of stuff and how I played the game. And it was just so hard. Like I was just, sort of AFK farming, just letting my teammates die. I didn't read the map or anything like that. And it just took so long to get out of my view of the game. And I just viewed everything that way. And then that really, really stalled my journey as a player.
So you view it more as rigidity in terms of play style.
Yeah.
Less in terms of like
the actual champion
the
itself.
execution of fights, or is it more about how a champion kills for Nexus, or a bit of both?
A bit of both, I would say.
Like I guess you didn't think about fighting very much, did you?
Well, I didn't need to worry because I was so tanky.
So that's where the rigidity came in.
Yeah.
Is you thought you didn't understand or didn't like. Well, it works for you, so I can't blame it. But like, you didn't respect League of Legends as a fighting game.
No.
That's where the main concern came. When you tried to learn how to fight, you're like, "Fuck it, I don't know how to fight."
Well, fighting like the champion that's like not super tanky. Like I'll be so far ahead that I'll just
dodging skill shots is the massive one. Nathan does not know how to dodge skill shots to this day because you didn't need to. Right?
I didn't need to. Yeah,
you didn't need to.
That was good. Me tanking skill shots for my team was
positive.
great. Right? I was so tanky.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of when I became that, I mean, it would have happened really fast, right?
Yeah.
So.
I think you were a living kind of testament to that whole idea, right? You had this very rigid view, and it was very hard for you to kind of
because it worked so well for me. That's the thing.
It was your comfort zone.
So well, yeah.
Yeah, and look, if you compare that to someone that maybe became an OTP later on, I think it's a very different ball game. I really do. Like, I think it's a different ball game, and I think that there's a big difference between what you've done and then, like, again, like I said, if someone got to Platinum 4 with like multiple different champions and then finally then expanded to an OTP, it's not that bad because they kind of already have a bit of a respect for differing elements of the game or different views or different lenses. So, like, I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's very important. But in terms of, like, rigidity of, like, the way you view the game, you know, like, I think this is just human nature. Like, you just get comfortable. You get in your own little rut. You like, if things are working, why do
That's the thing. It was working.
If it's working for you, then it's like,
it
why
makes
do I
it
need to change?
harder to get out of that, right?
Because it's like getting you results, right? And so, like, it's like, because then what happens when you expand from an OTP in that sense? You're comparing everything to what it would be like if you were playing that other champion. It's like, if I was playing this other champion, because you have so much mastery, you're in this constant state of kind of comparison.
Let's use we were talking about boomers the other day, Charles, right? And think about why people why, you know how they say that when you get older, you're harder to change your habits and harder to convince in your view because
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
that's right, because you've lived life and you've made it to 70 or whatever, and let's say you've been successful.
Yeah.
Why would I change?
Why change?
Why change? Like, that's worked for me. And then you preach that to like your kids in the next generation. That's like, you're an old boomer or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Where's the motivation?
Yeah, there's because it worked. I mean, there's no logical reason.
There's no
to
incentive.
change your view.
Exactly right.
So I think that's a good example.
No, totally.
And
so, like,
OTPs of boomers.
OTPs to boomers.
and this is the thing, because the way the game of League of Legends works, every champion plays the game in a slightly unique way. Like, their kit works in a very unique way. They play fights in a unique way. They kill the Nexus in a unique way, right? So when you play one champion for an extended period of time, you just simply don't learn or unlock other aspects or other avenues of killing the Nexus. So inevitably, you're going to have these gaps in your knowledge or gaps in your game understanding. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you never change, right? Because if you never change, it's like, I don't need to know how to, level 3 gank as whatever Elise if I'm a Karthus jungle. I don't need to learn that skill. This is not something, I can win my games perfectly fine. So it's not necessarily that you're like worse in every regard. It's just that they're just other avenues that are untapped, and your game, you start to, like, what's the word? Like, crystallize. Your view of the game starts to become very crystallized.
It's like building a wall, I guess. It's like hardening the wall or whatever it is.
And this is what we found. This is just what we found. It is a con. And so there are obviously positives to some of that, but it is a big con if you were to expand.
I think this was part of my motivation to play a lot of different things. Is like, obviously I was a professional coach, so I wanted to view the game from many different perspectives. So I knew other ways to kill the Nexus. Like, I've killed loads of Nexuses as like a Renekton, like a Thresh, like an 80 carry, like a Lilia jungle. Like, I've killed the Nexus in so many different ways possible. Yeah. And I think that, like, that's it doesn't make me better at killing the Nexus in any specific ways, but I do know of more ways to win, which is help me coach, I guess.
And this is where I think as well, like, this is where it gets messy, is because I think in the higher elo brackets, you do get very rewarded for understanding how to kill the Nexus multiple ways. And like, the best OTPs are the ones that are actually, there's different types of OTPs in a way, right? You have those OTPs that are just generally open-minded, curious, intelligent players that they're not like super rigid, and they didn't kind of get their LP and by playing a champion in like one particular way, and they're actually very intelligent holistically. And you get others that are super, super rigid. And this is where I think this is where the whole discussion of what champion you OTP matters.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do a comparison, right? Let's say there is a Nunu OTP who got to 1k LP, and you have an Akshan OTP. Akshan, just by nature, would teach you a lot more of an expanded view of the game and force you to develop different skills, a wide variety of different skills to kill the Nexus. Nunu would be an example of a champion that you could still get high elo, but it wouldn't, you wouldn't have all of those skills. You wouldn't be forced to learn many different ways of killing the Nexus.
Especially with like Nunu's a good. We actually have some examples of champions that warp your view of the game and reference points. Is like Nunu has his W ability, which is so unique, like the snowball, and like other champs like Ivan and stuff like that. They're so unique that you're actually not really learning other league skills. Like you can sort of cheat ganks as a champion like Nunu and stuff like that. So
that word's key, cheat. I think that's an important one to tunnel on. Like for AD carry, I think Twitch or Draven are champions that like it's hard to translate your skills once you learn them because with Draven you cheat threat because you just do more.
I don't know the word. I don't like the word cheat. It's more like they compensate for, right?
Yeah, their kit compensates for a specific aspects of the game, and you can overly spec into one area. Is what I'm saying.
And this is where that like I want to mark this. I want to come back to this whole idea of like the uncomfortable conversation of like
I've already angered so many people.
Of what, yeah, exactly. Like what makes the like differing skills of different OTPs. Like we're gonna have to have that uncomfortable conversation. Right.
So let's keep going.
Keep going. We'll come back to that.
Okay. So the other con I've wrote here is don't understand how every champion works. We've sort of touched on it a little bit, but yeah, like let's say if you start your journey, you just one trick like me. I have even to this day, I haven't played like probably 100 champs in the game still.
That's
like
crazy.
Once or 80 champs in the game, right? And I mean, I do know what they do now, but like that took me a long time.
Well, again, do you know what they do, or do you know what they
that's
do?
True as well,
do you know how they interact? Do you know the passes? Do you know the deep dives? Like, do you know when they're strong, when they're weak?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like you do to an extent, you must.
Yeah, of course.
You're a high rank player, but
course.
But yeah, there's always that other level you get by playing a champ.
That's right. So if you play like a lot of champs, you will have a good idea of strengths and weaknesses. And then it also goes into when you one trick champion, you start to over focus on your champion's weaknesses and not think about the strengths anymore, because this is where people try and cover up and patch up games with builds where you see OTPs go crazy builds because they're trying to win every single game with the champions. They think that the builds are the issue, right? Versus just saying, accept your champion's strengths and weaknesses. You just lose that game, build this way, who cares, and just move on.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's a con though. Like I think that's as an OTP, that's what you have to do.
Overemphasizing your champion's weaknesses.
No. Like
cover up the obvious weaknesses with the setup.
I think that's what you're obligated to do as an OTP. I mean, I think it's a con for someone who's watching an OTP and trying to learn the champion.
I see.
But
that's the danger.
That's the danger. I don't think it's a con for the OTP though.
Well, don't you think it can go too far? I think that's what Nathan's kind of describing.
Right.
Is like you start playing the champ in such a berserk way,
bizarre way,
that it just becomes you're so out to lunch that you're not even playing the champ
you're trying
anymore.
to solve. But I honestly think that's like for me, that's what I respect about OTPs, and I think that's what makes them so hard to beat because. And that's the skill of an OTP. You need to understand what your weaknesses are and how to cover for those weaknesses. I think it's so important.
I think it's a skill set that it's kind of a bit uncomfortable to kind of acknowledge because it's a bit kind of counter to what we talk about a lot, Nathan. I know me and you probably more so than Curtis. So yeah,
I mean, in mid lane you have to. It's inevitable. Like if you main Swain, you got to know when you're going to go ignite Airy and an early centric build versus like you might go something with Conk and TP or setups and summoners and runes matter. That's the
They do matter.
They matter a lot.
But people can go out to lunch with that.
You can go out to lunch. You can use that as like a band-aid solution of like poor fundamentals and shit like that.
Yes, that's where the worry comes in.
Yeah.
I don't want people's focus there. I want people's focus. I'm just thinking
The
about
20%
my
is their
I'm just thinking
gameplay.
about my members. I just want them to not think about it. Go work on other stuff. Just forget about it.
Well, that's the thing as well, because OTPs don't realize how they're influencing the community. And we've echoed this sentiment many times on the podcast. And I do want, again, there's another point we'll have to circle back on.
I'll put it in the description. There's actually an episode we did on this a couple of months ago. Yeah.
The next point here I have is a con is obsessed with builds and 1%ers. Now, again, you could think that, that's great. They're getting into the details, as Nathan and Curtis always say. But, you go into I think of going onto an Azzapp main thread or just like a Reddit main thread. And all the conversation there would be like, what is the, how can we get, what's the next cheap build for the meta or whatever
because
it is,
they try and make up the champion's weaknesses. It's like, here, I'm going to play Smolder, but I've got this crazy setup to win lane on Smolder instead of accepting that Smolder's a bloody scaling champ and you don't need to win lane on Smolder,
No, totally. And this is the thing, is that optimizing builds and runes is great when you're at a certain level of mastery. But up until that point,
there's big 20%ers.
5%, 10%, 20% that need to be ticked. And then once you're at that point of a lot of mastery, that's when optimizing builds really comes into play. But then what people want to do is they want to skip the steps, right? They want to just be like, well, I saw XYZ OTP, build this into this matchup. And then, but that person has already exhausted every other option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're versing way higher caliber players. With if they were in your games, they would probably go the most boring setup and win anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like you don't need to get to, and that's where the overcomplication comes into play.
And this is uncomfortable to say, but like you just don't have the right to talk about items unless you're at a certain point. Just do the cookie cutter stuff, guys. Like,
yeah, it's a really uncomfortable conversation because
Yeah.
I don't want to. We don't want to stifle people's curiosity
and fun.
and
Maybe
passion.
people like that part of the game. Yeah.
But it's just you need to understand its place in the grand scheme of like everything else that you could be doing.
because we've seen players get ruined by over focusing on that part of the game. That's where that's where this comes from.
Exactly
It comes from
right.
a place of experience, seeing people overemphasize that aspect of the game and get
like
obliterated.
a really clear example in my mind. This is the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like I will beat this Yone and lane as Victor, not because I have bone plating and whatever. It's like I'm just avoiding their Q3s. You know, I could have done it with bone plating, without bone plating. I could have done it with Lich. I could have done it with Lichbane, without Lichbane, with BFT, without it, with Ludens. It doesn't matter. Like I'm dodging and spacing well. My wave management's good, and I'm just outplaying this person with spacing and tethering. Right, so just remove that is the bigger fish to fry. If you're getting hit by EQ3s and you're not playing around those cooldowns, that's the most important thing, and that's where I think the confusion comes into play.
Next con here we have don't really learn about draft champ select because we're locking in the same champ. Yeah. We don't really need to think about draft holistically. Team comps. What do you guys think about this one?
The con is that you just don't really develop that as much. Potentially, though, an argument could be made that as an OTP, you do understand how bad a comp is. So I would say the con being you're just going to be in a lot of ugly comps.
Yeah, we have next here grief. You can just ruin comps.
You're going to grief drafts. It's like, oh my God. Like this is, you have an Evelyn OTP on your team. You're full AP. They're going to lock in Evelyn no matter what. It is what it is. And yeah, you're going to have some very, very bad drafts.
Next con is champions are simply bad in the meta. It's been nerfed a bunch and you're at a massive disadvantage. I'd say this is maybe more so a lot where a lot of the OTPs, they play more so fringe champions. They don't get touched much by Riot in a way.
The better ones do.
The better ones, they have more success,
I'm thinking
right?
like Nyla OTP.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have I did an episode with Quant today about Urgot. Like, Urgot doesn't really get touched much. It's not not only the popular champions that people OTP. But if you OTP, I don't know, what's a champion that gets a brutalized?
Jinx.
There you go.
Tony Rell lanes Jinx.
Even I think any champion that's in the pro play meta, if you remain like a Zia, it's so hard.
Yeah. If you're a Kai'Sa OTP, she's like literally rank one of the worst. Like,
it's really
also
hard.
like Rise gets brutalized.
If you main any champ or OTP any champ that's like in the competitive like wheelhouse.
You're
Lee
Sin.
Yeah, I mean, Lee. That's why. Yeah,
you're just screwed.
Rek'Sai. Hasn't Rek'Sai been changed 100 times? Rek'Sai goes at alt reworked twice.
Yeah. I mean, Rek'Sai had his strengths and rings. I mean, I sent it in every meta. That's what I did. Next one here is the longer you one trick, the harder it is to diversify your portfolio. This goes back to our conversation, Charles, about boomers and we're talking about our parents and stuff like that. You know, it's
they've got some good stock options. Why diversify?
So it's just we sort of already touched on this one.
Yeah.
And then playing OTP through weak and strong metas, and it can be mentally taxing.
Yeah, I mean the fact of the matter is that playing a champion that's objectively weak in a meta that sucks for your champion is mentally taxing. It's very hard, and League is already a very hard game, and sometimes being an OTP can make your journey harder through particular moments in time. So, I think it's just important to note that fact. That's a con. That is it objectively a con.
All right, so that's our pros and cons. Now, we're sort of going to dive into some more questions and some more topics here about OTPing. So we sort of touched on this already a little bit. OTP warping the view of, the way that you view the game in reference to what is strong, how to actually win games. We already talked about the Nunu, how you can sort of cheat ganks, cheat that fundamental. You actually don't really learn what a good and a bad gank is a lot of the time.
Compensating for other fundamentals.
Cheating.
You love cheating.
Charles
I just know the community is going to be like,
cheat.
They're cheating the game. They're cheesing the game.
Yeah, they cheese the game.
Cheating. You're not cheating.
Dude, I'm thinking of like a Twitch who can basically deploy out of base, press Q, walk up on mid wave, and just get a nice little pick. Like that's not a transferable skill to another champion. You
But
are
it's not
che-
cheating.
You are
I wouldn't say that's cheating. It's just a different skill.
I'm just
right?
trying
Finds your champ
You're just
identity.
leveraging
I'm trying
the
to
kit.
rile people up. That's what I'm doing.
No, but it sort of is in a way because, like, unless you know that you're doing that intentionally, it's like this wouldn't work on other
Right.
champions.
No, that's the thing.
mindset.
Is that it's you have to know that you are covering or compensating
Yeah.
for other skills. But if you don't know that, then it is cheating. in a
Then-
way, right?
because
Well,
then
this-
you just go to the next game, you try and do that with like a jinx and you just die.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that probably doesn't happen, but I think like what this ties back to is like labeling yourself and kind of acknowledging, and this underpins the whole OTP conversation is like, are you a challenger AD carry or are you a challenger Twitch? Big difference, right?
This is a really, again, uncomfortable conversation. I get this question all the time in the school community. We see that. Like I had one recently with, it's like, am I just an Aurora OTP? That's a diamond Aurora, or am I, a diamond mid laner? That whole
Yeah.
question. And the fact of the matter, if you're playing, 90% of your games with one champion, you probably can't call yourself a diamond. You're not a diamond holistic mid laner. You are a diamond Aurora player in that case.
But that's asking you to define yourself, by the way. Don't feel the need to defend yourself
Yeah.
around this stuff. Like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
But
matter.
it
I'm not
is
there to
what-
judge.
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Who gives a shit whether you are or you're not? Like, yippee! Like you can get one person can get to diamond on 5 champs. You get it on 1. Who gives a shit? Like we're not. It's not a competition in that sense. It's like you're climbing the way you want to climb, and that's it.
I think what we're trying to say here is that the danger of that and warping your view with this is that people get confused or get really angry when that's not working when they start learning other roles and other champions or that. Because like that's, if you embrace it, you say, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, I'm just gonna be a challenger, Twitch, whatever. But because some of our students, guys, they literally were, an OTP or on this champion, and then they're in our programs, they're trying to learn other champions, and they're just really frustrated. Why can't I figure this out? Why can't I learn this champion? Why is this so hard? Why am I so far below? And they need to be aware that's the reason why, right? So,
Yeah.
I think we need to differentiate between someone who just doesn't care and someone who's confused why it's so hard to climb on other champions because their view of the game's
Every
warped.
champion has particular. Well, again, I always view League as this bar graph of like skills.
It's like a Skyrim character. You're building a Skyrim
spec,
character.
Yeah, you spec into particular things, right? And every champion inherently forces you to spec into particular skills. So again,
Let's use some examples here, Curtis. So I have Karthus and Shyvana. These are champions that can quote unquote just AFK clear, and they actually rewarded for that, especially Karthus. You can just press R. What I find with these type of students, the people that play them also AFK farming students, they don't really learn to F key. They don't really need to worry about their laners dying. They just let their laners die and sort of carry in the mid game. Now, if you start applying that to other champions, it's going to be very difficult because, if you're Jarvan, you really need to set up a win condition to actually win the game. So Karthus, Shyvana players, if you play that to like Diamond 1 or whatever, your view is going to be very warped. Your view of the game is going to be very warped if you start playing Lee Sin or whatever. I've really struggled with some of those students. You had here, Charles, ADC scaling champs versus, like, let's say a Jin MF versus a Zeri, and they start needing to trade in lane versus they can just minimize lane. That creates bad habits. Or
Yep, for sure. If you're like a Cogmore main, for example, and then you want to start picking up a Jin, you're going to need to learn how to short trade. You're going to need to learn how to play aggressive in lane. You're going to need to get push. You're going to learn how to provide utility and not just shred tanks. Like, you're going to have none of the skills required, even though the champions are in the same role. And this is like the game gaslights you. Like, AD carries are all the same, or mid laners are all the same. They're nothing like each other for some champions anyway.
For Curtis, mid, you had Katarina and Yasuo OTPs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is where there's a lot of Katarina players that they're very good at fighting, right? They know how to get ahead, get a lead. They pick up a bunch of kills, but their holistic understanding of how to like play the game of League of Legends, is very limited because they can kind of just stat check people once you
They
get ahead.
cheat, Curtis.
Yeah, well, if you want to call it that.
Charlie's going to make you say it, Curtis.
I was going to make you say it.
Yeah. You're basically implying it at this
Yeah.
point.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the reality is that, I just don't think they're cheating. So I'm not going to say that.
We'll see.
But yeah, like so again, an archetypal Katarina player, they know how to kill people at level 3 with Electro Ignite or run people down the lane or whatever. Or they kill people at 6, they snowball, they pick up a few kills, and then they just start running around the map, and they might give a bounty or two, and then they might snowball and win the game. But at some point, they're going to have to start learning about who else in my team is strong, where's my jungler, protecting my bounty. They're going to have to start thinking holistically, but it's not intuitive. It's not really, you don't learn these intuitively throughout your journey. One champ I will mention is Malzahar. Malzahar is that kind of similar to what you're mentioning with bot lane. Like if you play Malzahar, it's great for learning the absolute basics, but if you keep playing it, you're not going to learn how to posture up aggressively and trade and time your trade with last hits and, ward and lean and do all that stuff. You're just not. You're not incentivized because you're going to sit back, press E on the wave and pop it. And that's it. And you're going to scale. You're going to press your R. You're going to team fight. You're going to be fine. So, yeah, every champion, there's a lot of champions that will teach you a very, very niche way of playing the game.
You wrote down here, or both of you, top lane, just split pushes, and over split pushing, you wrote down here a Tryndamere player that you play with, Curtis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I want to talk about Tryndamere for a second. I actually have a person in my academy that plays Tryndamere mid, and his view of the game is incredibly warped. Yeah. He and again, tying back to the warped view of the game, he views like all these champions that like have, CC mobility or whatever, it's like broken. You know? Like Talia is the most broken champ. Like, how do you beat that champion? It's impossible. And he can't fathom the weaknesses of these champions because he's viewing everything through the lens of a Tryndamere player. And
play Talia. I'm playing Jarvan versus Talia with no flash. Thank you.
Exactly right. And I don't blame him. I understand his situation, but the unfortunate situation that he's got himself into is that he's got like such high expectations of him as an OTP. He can't fathom that he has to develop these other skills. He kind of feels like he should just be able to keep doing what he's doing and get results. And he has to start learning other elements of the game and learning. He has to be more cerebral, but that's so uncomfortable for him because he's never had to do that to get to where he's at. And he's in a tough spot. And honestly, like when people see him type in the Discord, it's like, holy, this guy's out to lunch. Like, what is he talking about?
Well, this is the warping view of OTPs. Because your champion's just going to be really bad against some champions, you're going to be labeling those champions. You say everyone, this champion's OP, this champion's OP, this champion's OP. And like I had this with Rek'Sai versus Graves. Like a good Graves absolutely obliterates me as Rek'Sai. And I think like Graves is like such a scary champion, but you like hate seeing Graves on your team, right? And like zero utility. Graves can be really bad champion, especially when he falls behind.
I love Rek'Sai on my team.
There you go.
I also think we engage supports, by the way. A lot of people play like Samira or Kai'Sa, and they just love Lordless Leona. They think like Nami and Yuumi is like the scum of the earth. Like, but these champions are cool. They've got their place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is part of the experience, maining a champion. So, like, again, I think if you were to double down and be an OTP, you need to understand your view. Like, you need to understand how the champion is warping your view. And be a little bit humble in that regard.
And the last one here, Charles, you wrote down when you learn you OTP through a support engager, playing a support champion and engager versus an enchanter.
Yeah, I mean, just it's another example of just an entirely different view of the role. We have a lot of engager players who, as Curtis's phone is going off.
All right,
lovely. We're not going to edit that. Being over reliant on having a go button as a support. Like, how do I win the game as a support player if I don't have a go button to engage? It's just like a whole different skill set to understand. Like, I have a lot of people who try to learn enchanters. Like, how do I actually win? Like, what do I do to win as enchanter?
Sorry, I thought that was the Tryndamere player. I was just thinking, fuck.
He's calling me out. He's calling it. It's like, all right.
He's calling me
What's
out.
going on?
All right. Now the question comes into... So are we happy with the whole warp view of the game? Just understand how OTP warps potentially your view of the game?
Yeah. And again, we're just stating the facts. We're not here to judge. And I'm not even saying this is necessarily always a bad thing. It's just the reality. It will... your view of the game will be warped, and you just need to be aware of that.
I mean, there's a lot of things in League of Legends which warps your view of the game, right? Smurfing, duoing,
even
games.
maining a role, like playing one singular role, even that as well, right? If you
100%.
don't, a lot of junglers don't know what it's like to view the game through a mid laner's lens, or a mid laner doesn't know what it's be to be the jungler.
It's like me on the podcast. The ADC role. ADCs don't win me the game.
No one knows how hard AD carry is until you've been there. You play AD carry, you will have a newfound respect for what you are doing to games.
That's right. Okay. Now, next question here. This is going to be a very sort of practical question for our listeners, our audience here is, so at what point in your journey is it best to OTP? And we sort of wrote down here a summary where the start of your journey, like literally start playing the game, sort of like medium the middle, around your middle of your journey when you're sort of like started playing ranked, and maybe we're in the tiers of silver to like emerald, and then sort of at the end, high elo of your journey. Because this is again where the advice just gets thrown out there, right? How do I climb at league? And then they
Pick Annie.
They just vomit this advice out, and they actually have no idea where you are in your journey, and they'll just tell you just go OTP. So let's get really specific here. When is the best OTP? So let's start at the beginning, right?
Yes. What did we do at the start of the game? I just want to play every champion in the game, throw the abilities around, find out what works. I think OTPing, if you first install, it's just not fun for most people to start off with. You're going to quit, I'm pretty sure.
I think it's detrimental. I think it's just flat out detrimental.
It doesn't work.
The way when you start playing the game, the way that we all learned is, well, maybe me less so, because I didn't play that much. I just went to Udia pretty quickly, to be honest. You're like a kid in the playground, like a sandcastle. Like, we're just like building sandcastles, knocking things down. We're just having fun, right? We just want to be a kid just playing around with things.
Like kid in the candy shop is what you're going for.
Just a kid in the candy shop, something like that.
Not too much choice. That's what.
Yeah, trying out a bunch of...
Not a kid in a sandpit destroying other people's sandcastles.
No, I mean, no, your own. You like knock down your own castle. I do not endorse kids hitting other people's sandcastles at the beach. That's disgraceful behavior.
Holy moly.
No, but that is definitely what we recommend. Like, getting a bit messy, champ pool cycling, experiencing the game through many different like lenses. And the reason for that is because, you need to understand what all these champions kind of do and feel like roughly. And I even give that advice to people. I mean, nearly every week I'll tell someone, you need to go out there and just play a bunch of this, play a bunch of that, dick around and feel it. Because there is a very big difference between, like, again, reading a league wiki and being like, oh, that's what that champion does, and like feeling what it's like to throw out that ability, even in practice tool. That goes a very long way.
And also, this will help you find what you like and what you don't like.
Yes.
Like, the worst thing you want to do is pick a champion or role, and then 6 months down the track, you just OTP it. You're like, actually, I just don't like this. And wow, I realized that top lane was way more fun. Yes. I enjoyed that way better, right? So it's just going to help you. You're just going to have a better experience overall, just playing a lot of different shit, a lot of different roles. Okay, so now let's say you've done that. You're like, okay, I've played a lot. I really like this role, and I like this champion. Or they might just view this is the champion that I really like, and this is the role that it fits into. So I just have to be that role.
Yep.
Now, is it better to just lock in an OTP? Like, are we talking about iron, bronze, or we think we should still be playing a bunch of different champions? Iron, bronze, silver.
Well, I mean, what do you think, Charles?
Well, it's interesting because I recommend players below silver play one champion, but not forever.
Yes.
So I would like players around this rank to play a champion for 80 to 100 games, then move on to another one. Because that way you're still going wide, but you're also going deep as well. And that's the key to climbing through these ranks is you need to get deep, but you also need to see... You don't want to distort your game view this early.
You're like temporarily OTPing.
Correct.
Temporarily OTPing is very wise.
Yeah.
Because again, if you just scrape the surface of many champs, you're not really... Too many champs, you're not really getting anywhere. You need to get underneath the surface a little bit, dig around, play around a little bit, and then move on to the next champion. I think, when OTPing really becomes quite valuable is when you're like platinum. Like platinum 4, like if you got to platinum 4 and you're like, okay, I have a pretty good understanding of the game. I understand the fundamentals pretty well. I've champ pool cycled a little bit. I kind of know all these different styles. Now I want to pick a champion and I want to see how far I can get. Like that's where I think you would have the best of both worlds. So that's where you'd be able to understand the significance of Jet Mastery. You'd have a good backbone to work with, and it could probably massively streamline your climb.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would only... I don't know if we're all going to be 100% aligned on this, but I would only urge that people do that if they feel like it, if it comes naturally. If they're like, fuck, I just wish I could just play the one thing every game. I want to streamline my climb. I'm going to enjoy it. Then go for it.
Yes.
But Platinum Plus, there's nothing wrong with having a champion pool of 2 even, and then keep cycling. Like, cycle forever if you want. Like, you can absolutely do that. We're not saying everyone has to OTP to climb, but, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think it's for everybody, OTPing Platinum Plus?
No, of course not. No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I'm saying that's when I think it's acceptable.
Yes.
If you want to OTP, that's the rank that would become acceptable. But
we're talking about the best time is,
best
right?
time.
That's
Again,
the best
it's like,
time.
let's say your entire time, you want it to be an OTP. I really want to be OTP. I know exactly what I want to OTP. If you could hold out until Platinum 4, that's when you would like not deal too much damage. There would be less self-sabotage in your journey. That's my take. But I think I personally, just on that conversation, and I think we should go around on this. Like, do you guys even believe that OTPing is good? Let's say again, we're going to enter fairyland here for a second, and let's pretend that everyone could be an OTP. Would OTPing be the better choice than having a champ pool or champ pool cycling or whatever? Do you think it's the best for climbing?
No, it never will be. Best for climbing. Okay, no, it is. Okay, climbing
It
versus
depends on who you pick, is my answer. It depends on the champion.
champion, yeah.
It has to depend on
I was
the
going to say like learning the game versus getting to 1,000 LP challenge, all right? So,
Okay, let's say, we need to say climbing to what rank?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm thinking rank 1 in my mind, but
because there's a very big difference getting to like master or grandmaster or chow, right? Or even top of chow. There's a very big difference, I think. So let's say, for the sake of this argument, let's say getting to master tier.
yeah, in that case, I would say yes.
I
OTPing
agree, yeah.
is the best way.
it
for
is the
sure,
best way,
for
yes.
sure.
Correct.
Yes.
It's so hard. Like I honestly, like, again, I'm more like, it depends on the champion.
Yeah, there's going to be some ones that are going to be harder than others. But if you pick a generic champion in the role, which is blind pickable, and that like is strong in that meta, you're sailing, dude.
I'm leaning more towards being a two trick. Like, I think having a little bit of diversity, like if I honestly, if we were all robots, like, okay, so let's say
But then you've got to be master tier at 2 champions. It's hard,
Yeah.
twice as hard.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
I think maybe the mid lane role might be a bit different, Charles. I think AD carry you can just send. I remember Tony role.
Yeah.
His big philosophy is just play Jinx until master. Right?
Play Jinx until master. That's what he would say.
He says it's the ticket. He literally said it's the ticket to Masters here as an AD carry. And for jungle, you don't really interact too much matchup wise. Like I think so you could. Yeah, I mean, I have so many one tricks in that I've worked with in Evelyn players. Just Evelyn it up to master.
I mean, I've got to master. I'm on a bunch of different jungles.
Yeah.
OTPing them,
Yeah.
right?
But I'm just thinking practically, like you just say pick a generic mid laner that's, let's say, Orianna. There's no way going from Platinum 4 to Master Tier as an Orianna OTP would be faster than having Orianna Galio. No way.
No, it's not, because mid lane's just an anomalous
different,
role. It
it's
doesn't
different.
exist.
I'd
Mid
say
lane's
top
like a
lane as
different
well,
game.
maybe.
Just speaking from what I've seen. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, if you're going to have a good 2 pool where you cover the weaknesses of each champion properly, as we talk about in our climbing masterclass.
Yes.
On school?
Because what a lot of people is they actually pick 2 of the same champions. Like
That's what it's useless.
That's what they're so useless. Like if you're going to get to Orianna Syndra together, Orianna
why?
Vic together, don't do that.
Like that's why I always say, like, if you could play Orianna Galio,
Yeah.
you're gonna cover it'll be so much easier. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, imagine playing you're rocking up into a draft, and all right, guys, I'm playing Orianna, and the enemy pick like Kha'Zix, Camille, LeBlanc, and it's like, just get me the fuck out. I don't want. This is gonna be a very hard game with no front line. It's very, very, very hard.
I don't know. Curtis might have convinced me now, because I'm thinking like if you're playing Jinx, and then let's say I had like a Jhin in my pocket or a Poke Varus in my pocket that I could play when my support picks a mage. Like even if I'm playing that second champion at like half the
At a
level,
lower level. That's what I'm saying.
It might still eke it out. Like it might be better to climb with.
So I don't know. This is where we're getting into theory land here, because
Yeah.
the reality is, again, OTPing is for people who are a special breed, who love a champion that much that it doesn't matter, and this human nature and emotions involved was never that simple.
Yeah, but I would objectively say that
For jungle.
gold one trick master is extremely effective.
I think
It
for
could be the
jungle, it
most
does make
effective.
sense. Like, I think of like scary jungle. You look at like a scary Evelyn OTP
Or Kane.
Or a
Or-
Kane
But
OTP.
junglers 1P in draft every time as well, so they don't even get to see what they're
send it.
versing most
Yeah.
of the time.
True,
Anyway.
it doesn't
actually
have no
matter.
bearing.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Okay, so it sounds like you just sort of summarize this at the very, very beginning of your journey. You're a new player, not a good idea to OTP. Middle of your journey, that's when it gets really good, acceptable to very, very good.
Yep.
And at the higher ranks, like, if you want to be a professional player, that sort of stuff, then you do need to have a diverse view of the game is very important.
Well, that's where I think for Master Plus specifically being an OTP, it depends on the champion.
It depends on
Just
the
straight
champion.
up. I mean, you can't compare. What's his name? The Akshan OTP again.
La Fougere.
Phantasm.
Oh, I thought you meant the
not
OS one.
Nah,
Sorry.
The E one.
I've been playing
Like,
a lot recently.
Akshan, him, and versus, like, again, let's say a Vigar OTP.
Or-
Starzal from EU. Or, like, they're not even...
I think Phantasm is a professional player now, by the way. He plays in NLC, doesn't he?
Right. Yeah.
I think he's actually
I don't
diverse.
know.
He's actually a testament to what you're saying. Is he actually learned a lot
Easier to
more transferable
digest.
skills?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
point.
Like he's learned a lot of stuff by doing
Like
that.
you can't compare and also just the difficulty of that journey. Like imagine trying to climb to high chow with Vigar mid.
Yeah.
Comparatively to Akshan, it's like you're comparing apples and oranges. They're completely different things. So like I think it's just too complex to generalize. It depends on the champ.
Maybe I know we don't want to go super deep, but maybe just explain why that is, Curtis, because you say that and we all speak League of Legends
Yes,
language.
right, okay.
So I'm like, okay, Vigar is capable of this and Akshan's capable of that. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. But like people listening, why is Akshan better than Vigar in that sense?
Okay, so there's two layers that I think I would talk about here. The first one is what is the skill cap and the capability of that champion, right? And so champions that have very versatile kits, I actually am, I've got a video on my YouTube that I actually talk about this in terms of the three kind of characteristics or underlying variables of kits that make them good high elo champions. And basically you had like these three kits and three variables, and Akshan has all of them. He has a decently strong lane, can get prio in a lot of lanes, pretty solid skirmishing, and can get side lane prio. So champions that can do a lot and have a high skill cap have more adaptability and versatility in a wide variety of games. A kit like Vigar is very limited. You don't really get a lot of side lane prio. You don't even really win many lanes, and your skirmishing is average. So you don't really have that adaptability to a wide variety of situations. So this is typically why when you see OTPs that are very successful, you see champions that are very, very versatile, but also high skill cap. So Yasuo, Aurelia,
Fiora.
Fiora, again, Akshan. So kits that are very kind of versatile, they're the ones that will reward you for OTPing. And then I look at Starzol. He's a Vigar OTP over in EU West. Exceptional player, great mechanically, very disciplined, but he's just limited because the kit simply can't do a lot in a wide variety of scenarios. And that's why he can cap out. Like he's like at certain metas, and he's like stuck at 700 LP. In another meta, he's 1200 LP. It just depends on what the meta is.
Yeah, I guess it's like OT being a champion that's like generally used as more of a counterpick champion in that elo range. Like you still play Vigar at a very high level, but you have to pick him in the right spot.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay, next up here, we have OTP players, one-trick players, playing other champions and roles. Now, you recently did a double lift video, Curtis. How did you observe him going from ADC to learning mid lane? Did you notice things there about? I mean, this is maybe not. Double lift's not an OTP.
Yeah,
he's an AD
it's more
carry
Dante's,
player.
I guess, is probably the better one to start with, right? So Dante's the Hecarim OTP. He's doing an 80 carry challenge. We'll actually pull up his OPGD now. So obviously, for people who don't know Dante's, he's like a pretty high elo. I mean, he's both
Hecarim, Challenger, Hecarim, one
Challenger
trick,
Hecarim
known for his Hecarim.
known for his Hecarim. And, he's on this account now. You can see he's got a very solid sample size of games. Now, look, this is obviously a disingenuous kind of argument because he's not only swapping, he's not only swapping champions, he's swapping roles, right? So it's not like he's going from Hecarim to like, Karthus or a different champion. He's going across roles. But what I would really want to highlight here is that I think an OTP would probably have a little less overlap or the ability to play other roles as much as other people. And that's why I think it's more of a comparison of Dante's to Double Lift, being a high-elo non-OTP player coming to mid lane and basically instantaneously getting mid lane master tier.
It's learned very
and 400
fast.
LP, 500 LP, learning very quickly, and he's on the road to getting challenger.
More transferable skills.
More transferable skills because he has a more diverse understanding of the game, whereas Dante's comes from a background very niche with Hecarim.
And just talking about his results, I think he's been stuck in Emerald for a long time, and he has he's got almost 600 games. I don't know how many games Double Lift has, but it wouldn't be
way less,
probably
way less.
a fifth of the games or something like that, right? So we're seeing how hard it is for an OTP on one role to transfer those skills to another role and a bunch of different champions.
Yeah, so it's not the greatest, we understand, it's not the greatest kind of comparison here because, again, Double Lift was an 80 carry, not a jungler, whatever. But again, you can kind of see the inkling, like there's a very stark difference between Dante's kind of 80 carry climb and Double Lift's mid climb. And also, Double Lift was not playing easy champions. He was playing Azir and having success with Azir. TF, a lot of people don't struggle with TF. He was winning with TF. Like he wasn't going out there and going straight to simple mid laners like Galio and Malzahar and stuff. He was going into the deep end, which I respect a lot.
Yeah, Dantes is also playing Press the Attack Draven, which might be one of the hardest things to kind of climb on.
Yeah, and it's not like that Dantes won't get there. It's obviously just a very
long time.
Longer time.
Yeah.
And so when you were looking at Doublelift's games, what were the skills that as a mid laner he was like? Did you see him playing like an AD carry player?
Yeah, and like Doublelift was playing, mid lane like an AD carry, and
how would you define that? What's that?
Well, he wasn't really taking control of the macro game. He wasn't taking control of neutrals. He was taking a back seat. He's like, I'm going to rock up to a fight and pump out a lot of damage, and he's pretty good at that. He plays very well mechanically. But a mid laner you're the center of the game. You're the player that needs to dictate what are we doing. You can't and mid lane champions can't just rock up to every single fight. And you need to be very disciplined in what fights you want to take and why and what the win condition is. You're kind of the commander in that sense of like mid game, especially moving into mid game. The games a lot of time do revolve around a mid laner. Like you dictate a lot about what happens. So, you can get away with that as an AD carry. You can't really get away with that as a mid laner.
Next up here is talking about OTP leaders in the community, and their authority can be very complicated. They're not coaches. You had someone in your Discord message you about Z99, where they, the word is the Bible for them, but it's more nuanced than that. So what...
this is, again, an uncomfortable conversation, and we might piss a few people off here, but the reality is that if you're an OTP that's played a true OTP, we're talking to Z9, like these are players that only play the champion for multiple years.
We're talking like 2,000 plus games, probably.
Metric ton games.
In like Challenger.
These players simultaneously have authority, but also can sometimes be in La La Land. There is this fine line between them both. And the reality is if you've played 2,000 games of Zed, you've lost sight of what the average person's experience with Zed is like. You can't resonate. You
can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah, well said. And the reality is that it's very hard for that player to understand what your experiences are going to be like with Zed, or let's just again use Zed as an example, in your games or in your elo bracket. And in the case of Z99, he's been playing in Challenger in Korea for quite a long time. So his little microcosm, his little world, his environment that he rocks up every day in is Challenger Korea games with Zed. So he has got this very niche, warped view of the game. And admittedly, he knows a lot about winning with games with Zed in Challenger in Korea.
So, for example, the Kiana matchup was brought up.
Yeah, so like in our community, there was a discussion about the Kiana vs Zed matchup. And even from what I've seen, in majority of elo brackets, if you've got two equally skilled players, it is favored to Kiana slightly. Like just fact, it's just this way it plays out. And there's a few reasons for that. There's the interaction between Kiana's R and Zed's R. And how easy it is Kiana spikes a little bit earlier, in my opinion. Kiana can punish. There's long cooldowns. There's a few, just from an ease of execution perspective. But that's not to say Zed can't win the matchup. If there's an element of skill expression, obviously, and setups and yada, yada, yada. And so, in this discussion, in the context of our community, this person who was a Z99 fan was saying, oh, this is misinformation. I've heard Z99 say he can win that matchup. But I'm like, well, okay. Well, yeah, maybe he can in his games, but the average player, that doesn't mean it's still not favored towards Kiana.
Yeah. Also need to be very careful when one tricks use the word and the terminology win. Win might mean sort of minimizing and outscaling. Or, maybe solo killing. I always think back in the day, Curtis, Fantix on Kassadin. You could ask him about match. He would win matchups, like solo kill people, like level 3, level 4 as Kassadin. And there's just no way that's possible. But he would say, that's a good match. I actually like that match. Or I can win that matchup. But that's, again, from the amount of mastery and how good that player is, you can't learn from that, until you get to that level.
There's so many, small little things. And this is the thing, is unless you're a hardcore OTP and, it's hard for them to resonate. And I'm not even blaming. I genuinely don't blame the OTP for
this. That's good. That they need to be in that lens, that world. They think about, they go to sleep and they think, how can I win that Kiana matchup?
I've got a crazy analogy. Okay, so imagine that the OTP is like a hermit. living in the woods in a house, right? And we're going to use I've been trying to think of a skill. We use origami as the skill. This is a hermit who specializes in origami, right? And this hermit has been out in the forest 20 years doing origami, right? And you walk into his little hovel in the woods, and he's got this beautiful 10-foot origami piece he's been working on for years. It's like a castle. It's got rooms and corridors, and it's got his own lighting setup. It's a massive piece, right? And then someone comes in and asks, how do I make an origami bird? And he's like, well, I don't fucking know anymore. Like, I'm so deep on origami. Like, I'm so past that. Like, I don't even think about that. Get away from me. I'm thinking about how to make like an electrical circuit out of origami. Like, so they're just so deep in their own shit, and they're truly in elite, right? But that eliteness is why they're so removed from the beginner.
Yeah.
And I guess another touch point of this is it's actually why professional players can't necessarily teach the game as well. Similar kind of concepts, right? Where they know so much that they take so much for granted.
No, well said. And just to riff on that even more, in their games, they're always imagining how a matchup plays out is played perfectly. If that's that one matchup like Zed versus Kiana, if the Kiana plays it perfectly and I play it perfectly, this is how it's going to play out. But we know that the matchups will never play out perfectly up until probably a challenger level, right? And so every elo bracket below that, there is an element of just, mistethering, misspacing. And the fact of the matter is that if that challenger player were to play in Platinum or in Emerald, they wouldn't do what they've just said.
No, they would just punish mistakes.
They would just punish mistakes. They wouldn't do what they wouldn't even probably take the setup. That's
too theoretical.
About.
Yeah.
It's too theoretical because they're not coaches. These OTPs are not coaches.
I also just think sorry, you keep going, Curtis.
No, you go on.
I was gonna say I just don't think that the average OTP or streamer or high elo player even considers the average player.
No.
It just doesn't cross their mind.
Of course not.
It's something that it's actually a
They're not
privilege to us.
incentivized
It's a
to.
privilege to us to do this because we just speak to thousands of them all the time, right? All these actual League of Legends players going through a normal experience.
And we're not. This is not coming from a place of we're on this pedestal. It's a skill that we've had to develop when we came from the esports scene, working with the highest level players to the average player.
Scrimming
It
every
was
day,
so
draft.
jarring. How jarring was it? It's but why are you why can't you just click better here?
Why can't you tether? Why can't you space?
Why are you getting hit by this? And and then that allowed us to develop skills of understanding. This is what they're not understanding. This is what they're not understanding. And developing that took years.
You have to learn how to control the VOD and not speak too quickly and learn how to translate
the skill
stuff.
count is so high. And so I think that I think that there is this kind of inherent gaslighting within the community around players watching OTPs, and there's a lot of beautiful information that you can learn from them, but I always sometimes feel bad for the general community because they don't know who to trust and what information is factual, and it just gets very ugly, it gets very messy. And I think that my advice for this is you just can't take anything for Bible. That might be the case, what they said. I'll test it in my own games, and I'll see what feels good for me, what's working for me, you never always value your experiences more than anyone else's. You have to play the game and feel out what makes sense for you in your games. That's the biggest bullshit detector.
Use OTPs as guide,
Yes.
like a good guide, but as you said, don't take it for the Bible. That's what you saw that situation in your Discord, right? It was the Bible's no, this matchup, this guy says this, bam, done. And then how about we get into the game and actually play it out?
And the crazy thing is that was coming from Edo, who was Edo, he's the Kiana player, say was Kiana favorite. He's also just a very intelligent, well-rounded, 600 LP EU master player. And he knows the matchup really well. And but that shows the difference between Z99 and Edo would be obviously very different, right? Z99's like what 1500 LP bloody Korean challenger. That's the levels to the game.
Also, that guy, he's a Z player. He was saying that Kiana matchup's hard.
Yes.
He was saying, well, no, Z99 says this.
Yes.
So that gap, that 1000 LP gap that's the level that Z99's on. He thinks that matchup's easy, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Okay, and the last thing here, Curtis, you've got a tweet from Azzapp, who was on our show a while. Responding to LS, was it?
So there was an LS tweet here. Do you want to maybe read this one out?
So LS's tweet here says, the most fascinating thing to me about so many streamers starting to do off-roll, off-champ stuff, I would say it's in response to Dante's and Double F doing their little challenges, is actually how many of them have poor win rates in lower MMRs. Really goes to show that the hone-in of just very specific stuff on X-champs goes a long way way more than game understanding. So that's an interesting observation that had 2.6 thousand likes and 300,000 views. So a lot of people potentially agreed with this or thought this was an interesting tweet by Alice. And then Azzapp here responded saying, the game is simply too complex to be grasped fully. Everyone hones in on something to reduce the number of variables that they have to contend with. Some people specialize a bit more than others, but essentially everyone leans on certain preferences. It's simple math when you think about it, even with a basic example of drafting. Assume 20 champs are playable within a role. To play every matchup once, you need 400 games. This is not even accounting the team comp, summoner spell, rune, and item variants. The best way to cheat... There's your favorite word, Charles.
Hey.
The best way to cheat the game is to pick one champion always and reduce the 400 possibilities to mere 19. Specialized knowledge gap will compensate even some bad matchups. A perfect AI player that doesn't have preferences beats everybody, but in the human realm, specialization is the name of the game.
I like that terminology, specialization. Not something that we said, but that's a greatly succinct way to put it.
Yeah. And that specialization doesn't even necessarily mean OTP. You know, you can specialize in a handful of champions. And I think, well said, that's exactly what our philosophy is as well. Hence why we recommend Champion Mastery. We're totally aligned on this. And I think, these OTPs doing these challenges is kind of highlighting that. It's really bringing that to the forefront, the significance and the power of Champion Mastery. It really comports with our view.
I also like the concept of game understanding, just that very loose terminology of like, oh, I just understand the game, It's like that doesn't really like plug and play onto the killing the Nexus on the Rift as much as people think it does, right? It's more like you can talk about the game and we can kind of have opinions, but unless you can actually execute on what you're talking about on at least one champion, then it kind of amounts to nothing,
Yep. Okay.
That's really it for these topics.
So now to you guys, like, what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments about our discussion about OTPs. We dove into a lot of topics. If we missed anything, let us know, or any questions. Any final comments before we wrap up this episode, guys?
No, I mean, I think there's so much you can really talk about. I think we tried to touch on many different topics, so we probably missed some things. Hopefully, in the comments, let us know what you think we missed. We'll be able to cover that again in another one.
Good work, guys. Let's keep on improving. 3-block process, Champion Mastery. We'll see you guys on our next episode.